Hello. We start the second part of our course, but today we are going to finalize the section about the demand for money, and we are going to talk about the demand function for money. So we talked already about where the demand for money comes from, what are the main factors, how could we understand demand for money because of different purposes. And here, the main concentration is on the estimation of the function, which is how the demand for money function could look like and what are the main things to consider. So, to sum up what we learned about precautionary, transactionary, and speculative demand for money, we could say that there are mainly two factors. The first factor of a demand for money is income, wealth, and the second are rates on return on alternative assets, which would represent the alternative costs of holding money. So we have those two main factors that could be modeled, that could be included into different functions. And now the question is, how should we write the demand for money function? So in the simple way, we can say that the demand for money is a function of income and interest rates, as there might be many other alternative assets or many other possibilities to hold your funds instead of holding cash, but all their rates are interrelated, and that's why we can write only one R for the indication of all the other interests in the economy. So we know those two main factors, but the question which lies beneath is, what is the form of a function? Is it linear? So the interest rates and income has a linear effect on the demand for money? Is it log linear, which would be linked with the Cobb-Douglas function? Or maybe it's non-linear. Maybe it is quadratic or whatever else. And so how can we know this? This is very difficult question to answer, but as most of the empirical research methods are linked with the linear functions, so we are going to discuss the possibility of a linear function of a demand for money. So we can say that what we already learned, that the amount of money that people hold is linked with the income. So it's some share of our income which we hold in cash, and this mainly depends on interest rate, that's the other factor, and mu, which would be just error, or all the other possible things, but which cannot be excluded as some kind of very important factor. So the total demand for money would be linked with interest rates and real income, and as well price level in the country, as of course the higher the prices, the more money we need because of the transaction motive, as we need more cash in order to buy the same amount of goods and services. So converting that a nominal demand for money function into real demand for money function, we could say that that it is linked with the interest rate and with the real income, as the prices becomes irrelevant. To transform that, we could add inflation rate. On one hand, price level makes no difference on the real demand for money, but the expected inflation rate, PE, might be very important because we make the decisions today looking at our expectations, and so expected inflation rate could change our decision on money today. So we can so this would be a linear form of the function when we interlink all the factors with the demand for money in a linear form, having or aiming to find out the coefficients which would indicate the elasticities and the effects of the factors. The other possible linkage or the other possible form of function is log linear, which would be logarithms of the all the indicators. And in this case, as mainly we do, which is natural logarithm, as this helps to make the relation a bit more linear than it actually is. But the problem is with the R, as R, which indicates the interest rate, is between 0 and 1 normally, and the logarithm of a number from 0 to 1 makes it negative, and that's why it's very often that logarithm of r is replaced by logarithm of 1 plus r, which would make it a positive number, more than 1. And in all the cases when we have log functions, we should be aware of the possible range of our indicators, so that we would not get some unlogical findings or some unlogical numbers. So we can have a linear function, we can have a log linear function. The other approach is about on the demand for money is linked with the Cobb-Douglas function, which makes indicators or factors as a power function of the demand for money. And so we could say that the demand for money is linked with the interest rates and income with some at some power. Though of course we already talked how to make this power function linear. We again need to log it, and we come back to the same issue with the R, and that's why in order to avoid again the same problem of the negative indicate number of R of log R, we'll leave it unlocked as to avoid possible mistakes. So if we convert it now back to Cobb-Douglas function, we would see it being a bit different because of this exclusion. And on one hand, you may say, come on, these two formulas, the one with logged R that we had previously here, and this one with unlocked R, is almost the same, as well as these Cobb-Douglas functions. They are not so very much different, but even small differences sometimes may cause very big differences in outcome. If we aim to estimate the demand for money in the country as accurate as we can, the choose of a particular function makes it very important. And even though the differences of those two functions may seem very small, applying them empirically may lead to very different results. And so this may mislead monetary policy in the country, and may be the cause of some turbulences in the economy. So which is better? It's again, none of them is the best one. So that we could say in advance what form of function to choose. Though it should be the one which would show, or which would be applicable more easy, and the one which would had smaller errors. um, so one thing that we discussed is the discussion on the format of a function. So we have two possibilities of the log function or Cobb-Douglas function. Now the second discussion is about income variable. Okay, when we say there are two main factors of a demand for money: income and interest rates. Interest rates maybe are not so so worth of a discussion, as this is current interest rates based on which we make a decision. But when we talk about income, we can find different approaches here, and that's what we need to talk a bit more now. In general, the question is, what income has the biggest importance on the demand for money today? Possible three approaches: current income, so the income which we earn today. And so that's why we would, if we estimate the demand for money at the time t, we would put current income at the time t, so this year or this month. But probably that's not very true, especially if we talk about precautionary motive of holding money. Possibility of having less income next year or next month, in general next period, may cause us to hold, for example, more money today. And so it's not only current income, but also maybe future income, which has an importance for the demand for money. So the other approach is expected income. So what do we expect about income in the future? So which would mean that the demand for money at the period t would depend on the expected income in the period t. So what do we expect for the future? This expected income is suggested to be estimated by using rational expectation hypothesis, and we will come to the discussion of them a bit later. The third approach, argued by Keynes, first of all, is permanent income hypothesis, which says that people make a decision make a decision today, thinking about the income that they are going to earn during their lifetime. It's not only expectations, but it's like all the possible income that we can earn during our life. And so it's not only about precautionary demand for money, but also about transactionary demand for money. That permanent income is the main factor of consumption. And so that's why the demand for money should be linked with all the income that we are going to earn during our lifetime. So this would say that the demand for money in the period t would depend on the income, permanent income, in the period t. And this permanent income could be estimated by using adaptive expectation hypothesis. It's a question, of course, what income is the most important. Including current income makes the estimation of the demand for money the easiest, as we don't need to think and we don't need to estimate the expected or permanent income. Though expected income or permanent income could give us better understanding on the demand for money, as people are looking a bit more and considering a bit more than only our earnings of today. And that's why the discussion on the expected income and permanent income could be much more advantageous and could give us way more accurate results. So we already mentioned two expectation hypotheses, rational and adaptive. Uh, in general, in economics, expectations play a very big role. And unfortunately, we do not understand completely how do people make expectations. Of course, economists try to build models, try to write everything in formulas in mathematic way, how the expectations are built. We are not going we're not going very deep into this, but I want you here to understand the different approaches towards expectations. I believe all of you have heard about rational expectation hypothesis, as we assume always that people are rational decision makers, so somehow they should make rational expectations about the future. So rational expectation hypothesis says that individuals uses all the available information at his disposal and informing his expectations on the future values of a variable. So, which would say that, in other words, that people are rational and their expectations are based on all the available information, all the available theories, all the available statistics and experiences from past, all the available rumors and the opinions of the experts in general. They listen, they study, they analyze, and they make their own expectations about the future. And here the discussion, which is the most difficult when we talk about rational expectations, the different people may form different expectations based on the same rational expectations hypothesis. And that comes, or that happens because of the fact that people have different information available. People have a limited understanding on the same information. We interpret the information differently, but we also have different beliefs in how economy works. And for example, okay, my example is going to be from economics, but for example, if it rains 2 days in a row, what would you expect about the third day? Some of you would simply say, no, it shouldn't rain because it was already raining 2 days in a row. And the others would say, if it was raining 2 days in a row, so it should rain again. And we all are right. We all are building our expectations on the same based on the same model, but the answers are different because it depends on the different theories we believe in. So talking about economics, we have the broadest branches, which understands the economy differently. We have classical economics and we have Keynesian economics. And their understanding on the economy in the medium run is very different. So first of all is about the full employment assumption, or whether we believe that the economy comes into equilibrium in the medium run. And the classical economists would say yes, in a medium run, the economy fluctuates around its natural values, while the Keynesians would say not necessary. And that's how even in theory the modeling, the models might be very different, and the outcomes of the models might be different based on what theory we believe in. And so, in that rational expectation models, or the way the rational expectation models was implemented in building the demand for money function, we have two approaches. The first one is Lucas' supply rule, which is based on modern classical model, which says that with the labor market being in a long-run equilibrium at full employment, and with deviations in real national output from its full employment level occurring only due to errors in predicting the actual level of the money supply. So it says that the expected income should be equal to this natural income level, output in its full employment, which is medium run equilibrium, with possible deviations which may happen if central bank the policy of the central bank is not very accurate, so that if the actual level of money supply is deviating from that equilibrium level of a money supply. So that may cause some deviations in the actual income, on the expected income. But in general, if central banks are doing well, so the expected income should be equal to the natural income of the country. And so that's how we should estimate it. The Keynesian supply function is a bit different, and he talks of the wide broad deviations of income, which is not only due to monetary policy, and there are no equilibrium values, as you see. He says, or Keynesian supply rule would say that income would depend on the income of a previous period and some growth, which would happen naturally and because of the intervention of a monetary policy. So we have no equilibrium here. And these two approaches for comparison, you see, they both talk about the same issue, about rational expectations of income, but their factors and their understanding of it is different because they see the economy differently, because they understand the economy differently. So in both of them is rational. If both of them are based on the same assumption that we use all the available information at the time. Another way, or another expectation hypothesis, is adaptive expectation hypothesis, which is linked with a permanent income. Remember that demand for money is depends on the permanent income. So income that we are going to earn during our lifetime. An adaptive expectation hypothesis, talking shortly, assumes that people make the expectations based on their experiences. So what we already learned, what we already had. There are two in a textbook. There are two approaches presented. One of them that weights the income of the previous periods differently, saying that current income has the biggest importance on the permanent income, and the more lagged the income is, the smaller is the importance. The other Koyak transformation weights all of them equally. So adaptive expectation hypothesis assumes that our expectations is going to be based on our past, which makes them easier to write and to calculate and to understand, because there are less of subjective decision making. There are two more expectation hypotheses: a regressive expectation model, which would talk that income tends towards its long run value, so that in general the expected income in the future is gonna be very equal or very close to its average during the past recent, let's say, 10 years. And extrapolative expectations model would assume that income is going to grow at the rate which it used to grow in preceding period. So we are going to always to have the same increasement of income. Those expectation hypotheses are for modeling the expected and permanent income, which is an important factor for the demand for money function. So, which says that if we aim to find the demand for money, it's not gonna be enough to have only one equation. We will have to estimate the expected income first based on some of the expectation models, and only then we can move to estimation of the demand for money. The problem which we need to discuss at the end when estimating the demand for money are lags in adjustment, and so that when we build a statistical or econometrical model, we assume very often that everything happens suddenly, but in reality, normally we have lags for adjustment. And lags in demand for money happens because of habit, persistence, and inertia, so that people are tended to stuck to the habits they have on expenditure and savings and etc. They are inertic in their behavior, and so even though income may change, even though interest rate may change, the demand for money may change not that quickly because of these two reasons. The other reason of the lag is slow adjustment of money balances due to uncertainty on whether the changes in the determinants of money demand are transitionary or long lasting. So, which means that even though people, let's say, are observing situation very carefully and they could change their behavior very quickly, when they see the income changing, or especially when they see interest rate changing, it's a question whether it's just a short-term change or it's going to last for long. If we see interest rate increase this month, would it gonna be increasing in the next month as well? Or it's gonna come back, or it's gonna stay stable? Because of not knowing this, people would rather do nothing and wait for a while they could make a decision about how long these changes last. The third reason of a lag is adjustment costs. So that again, for people, when income or interest rate changes, to adjust their demand for money might be costly. There might be some monetary as well as non-monetary costs, which are linked with rethinking of their decision, which are linked to maybe with withdrawing more often the money or whatever. And so these adjustment costs may make people more cautious, and so may cause some lags in the adjustment of the demand for money.